All right, what's going on, guys? It's Simple Sports back again with another episode. I know it's been a while. I'm pretty sure I say that every video, but hey, whatever. I don't care. So this one's going to be a little bit longer. I'm going to touch on a couple different sports. Talk about NFL through I think this is week 9. A little bit of college football and a little bit NBA as well. I think I'm going to do this now because we have a lot going on, and I kind of misplayed how I was going to do things. I wanted to do separate shows, but I think, or separate episodes, I guess. But I think now that I'm starting to begin to get a feel for how I want to do things, I think I'm going to just do one long episode that discusses all of the 3 topics. That way, I don't have to scramble and figure out which one I'm going to do and what day. That's kind of what has been taking me so long, because I want to do certain things, and I'm behind. I'm a little late to it because, again, I work a full-time job. So while everything's going on throughout the day in terms of news and shows and all that stuff, I am way, way behind. Which is kind of helpful and hurtful at the same time, because I also like to listen to other people's opinions as well. But neither here nor there. Point being, I think I'm going to do just 1 or 2 long episodes per week, and I think that'll be a lot easier for me to manage. So with that being said, let's get right into it. First, I'm going to start with the NFL. Couple general notes so far. I've really enjoyed the season. A lot of very good games. That Seattle and Houston game a couple days ago was phenomenal. Obviously, game of the year so far. Very well may be the game of the year altogether, even if it's just from an entertainment perspective. Maybe not necessarily what's at stake. Obviously, it's just a regular season game, middle of the season. Not much on the line in terms of, let's say championships or playoff spots or division games. Like, obviously they aren't in the same division, but from an entertainment perspective, it's definitely one of the most entertaining games I've seen in a long time. Couple that with the Penn State Ohio State game, the recent Super Bowl. There's been a lot of great games within the last year or so. And I got everything laid out here that I want to talk about, so let's get right into it. NFL, what I want to talk about first is my playoff teams. So I want to update, and I'll talk about a couple of small things in the meantime, or while I'm doing it. But I want to update where I stand on my playoff team. So I'm just going to go through. I'm not going to go through each division or each team. I'm just going to give you the 6 from the AFC and from the NFC. So basically, the division winners and 2 wild cards, and just sort of give you a brief explanation as to why I think they are going to win the division, make the playoffs, or make the wild card spot. So first, we're going to start with the AFC, and these are the 6 teams that I have making the playoffs for this year. I have the Pats, the Chiefs, the Titans, Steelers, Texans, and Bills. Now, I'm going to have to find another team for the Texans because Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, and this really sucks, and I'm not a Clemson fan. I'm definitely not a Texans fan. I quote-unquote hate both teams. I don't hate either of them. Definitely don't hate the people or the players or the fans. Maybe some of the fans are annoying, but I don't. Hate is not a good word. But as a fan, I mean, strictly talking from a sports perspective, I definitely hate the Texans and the Clemson Tigers. But I've come to like Deshaun Watson, and he went down, for anyone that isn't aware, with a torn ACL at practice. Really sucks. I hope he gets better, comes back, and is just as strong, because he is phenomenal to watch. And that's being an objective sports fan. That's not being a Titans fan or anything like that. Like, obviously, it's going to help the Titans win the division, or at least be in position to win the division. But we know how inept they can be at times. But point being, I really do hope he gets well. I mean that sincerely. So I don't know, for another team, and part of it was I don't buy the Bills as a playoff contender. I think they're going to make the playoffs simply because I think it's almost by default. And the Texans are really good, but their record isn't that great because they had a couple of rough games to begin the season. And I think now with Watson gone, it's going to be such a blow, especially with them already having a losing record. Like, I just think that's going to be too much to recover from. So let's see. As I scroll through the list, the only other viable team I honestly see that could make it is the Baltimore Ravens. And again, I think that's by default. If you really ask me, I really only think there's 5 teams that are solid in the AFC, and really 4. I don't even buy the Titans as a solid team. Now, I think if you look at anyone outside of the Pats, the Steelers, and the Chiefs, I think any of those other teams they're good, but I just don't think they could compete with those top 3 teams. Now, Kansas City, but I'm talking solely based on record with them. I just think they're going to win that division. No one else in that division is really that good or scares me. The Bills, again, I don't buy the Bills. I don't buy the Chiefs, but someone's got to make the playoffs. And for me, those are the 2 teams that are going to make it. And I think now that the Texans have lost their starting quarterback, I think it's going to be the Ravens. But again, I think that's because someone has to make it. And I don't think anyone else is going to come close to that. So we'll see how it shakes up. So my 6 for the AFC are the Pats, Chiefs, Titans, Steelers. And then for the wild card spots, I have the Bills and the Ravens. Was the Bills and the Texans. But again, Deshaun Watson went down, so I'm going to go with the Ravens there. The Pats, they'll be fine. Everyone is either all in or all out on the Pats. People are panicking or people are not worried at all. Listen, I'm one of the people that isn't too worried. Now, listen, they definitely have some issues, but they have a very, very, very – and people say, well, that's the past, that's the past. Listen, the past definitely matters. And, yes, while you can't necessarily turn a lot of bad into good overnight or in the course of a season – I think it's equally as bad or equally as hard to go from good to bad, especially if you've done it for so long. And the Pats have been great for a very long time with Tom Brady, and I just don't see, how you just don't bet against the Pats. They're going to be there in the end, I'm sure. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl anymore. I don't know for certain. I still think that they are the favorites out of the AFC, but I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl. We'll see how things shake up over the next couple of weeks if they start to improve. But as of right now, I still have them going to the Super Bowl, maybe not quite to win it all. And then as far as my team, the Titans go, listen, I think, and this is being totally objective, they have a very, very, very talented roster. And it's hard to argue with the coaching because they went from 2 wins to 3 wins to then 9 wins to then expected to win the division and make the playoffs. So they had a 6-win turnaround in Mariota's second year. They should have made the playoffs last year. And so I don't necessarily – I don't know if it's the coach – like I don't know what is up with the coaching, but they are so hot and cold that it's ridiculous. Like they go out and they beat the Seahawks pretty handedly. And then they turn around and let the Texans hang 57 on them. Like, it's so mind-boggling to me how you could be that hot and cold and inconsistent. And I think that's their issue. If they play the way they played against Seattle, they're going to be a tough out because they run the ball really, really well, and they play solid defense. They don't have a great defense, but they definitely don't have a bad defense. It's somewhere in the middle. Maybe a little bit above average, but they definitely have some holes in it. And part of that's the secondary. The secondary is pretty much all new. Pretty much 4 brand new starters in the secondary. So I understand why they are having issues. But as we get closer to the playoffs and they start to creep up the win total, they're going to have to tighten that up. Otherwise, they're going to make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round. And for them, what would be really nice is if they win the division and get to at least host a playoff game and play at home. That would be obviously ideal. So we'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers because it's been so long since they were even relevant. And honestly, for me as a fan, if they were to simply make the playoffs, like for me, that shows so much progress. It makes me feel so much better. But I got to tell you, with Deshaun Watson out, and obviously I feel bad, but if he's out and they don't win this division this year, I may cease to be a Titans fan because literally Mariota is the only solid quarterback remaining in the division. Bortles is terrible. Andrew Luck's not even playing this year. He's out for the season as well. And they're going to go to Tom Savage in Houston, and, I mean, we all know what he is. And they are in first place. So there is absolutely zero excuse for them to not make the playoffs this year. Zero. And if they don't, I'm out. So that's all I got to say about the AFC. NFC. Now, this is where things get a lot more interesting. Eagles, Saints, Vikings, Seahawks, Rams, and Cowboys, believe it or not. I do have the Rams making the playoffs. I said before the year they're going to be my surprise team. I didn't actually think they would be as good as they are. I don't think that they're that good, but I think, again, they're kind of one of those, well, someone's got to make the playoffs. And I think they're just, when we get to the end of the year, they're just going to have the better record than the remaining teams, and I think they're going to get in. I don't buy the Panthers. I don't know why everybody does. I don't. There's people talking about them being Super Bowl contenders. How? I don't see it. I don't see it. Now, I know their defense is phenomenal, but, you know, I do not see them making they can make the playoffs, don't get me wrong. I just personally don't think that they will. I think they'll find a way to mess it up. But even if they do get into the playoffs, all these people talking about them being Super Bowl contenders, like, I don't see it. And I've watched a couple of their games. I try to watch over the course of the week. I try to catch up on all the games that I didn't watch on Sundays. Sometimes I miss a few. But I've watched most of their games, and they don't jump off the screen to me as Super Bowl contenders. So I'm not seeing what everyone else is seeing. On the other hand, there's the Eagles and the Seahawks, and they are legit. They are for real, the real deal. Carson Wentz is the real deal. Russell Wilson is that dude, and I hope that they make it to the NFC Championship and play each other, because that would be a phenomenal game. All in on the Eagles, all in on the Seahawks. Saints and Vikings, I'd be more in on the Vikings if they had a better quarterback. Keenum has played well, but he's just not that guy. Now, if he doesn't screw it up, they have a legitimate defense that could, you know, they could go places, but I just don't trust Case Keenum. The Saints, they are surprising me. I just don't. They're one of those teams that I'm not sure what to make of. I definitely don't bet against Drew Brees, so we'll see how things shake up for them. I just don't think they're good enough to beat the Eagles or the Seahawks. So those are my 6 from the NFC. Again, Eagles, Saints, Vikings, Seahawks, Rams, and the Cowboys take up the 2 wild card spots. Now, for my real Super Bowl contenders, I have 2. So, essentially, to me, what I'm looking at this as is AFC Championship and NFC Championship. And I have the Pats Steelers and the Eagles Seahawks. I think when it's all said and done, those are the 4 teams that are going to be left standing. I think those are the 4, to me, through this far in the season, I think those are the 4 best teams. And I think they're going to end up meeting in the AFC and the NFC Championship. And what's crazy is all of them have elite quarterbacks. Now, Big Ben, there was a lot of questions about him throughout the year, but I think he's silenced a lot of those, at least for the moment anyway. We'll see how things shake up over the next couple of weeks. But obviously you got Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, and Big Ben. Now, if you want to, that's 4 of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's no coincidence that those are the teams that are playing the best right now. So, for those of you who can't seem to get it right, a.k.a. Cleveland, I don't know what you guys are doing over there, but we'll get to that in a second. I also want to talk about my MVP leaders or candidates, what I see this far. And so far for me, numero uno is one Carson Wentz, followed very closely by Tom Brady. Alex Smith, even though I don't buy Alex Smith whatsoever, I don't buy the Chiefs whatsoever, but I'm out on the Chiefs. And I know they have a great record, and I know everyone's calling them the best team or the second best or the third best or whatever you want to call them. Look, man, I've seen this book before. It doesn't end well. Now, unless something has changed drastically internally, because it looks the same to me on the outside that it did over the last couple of years. Alex Smith is playing great. They have some great weapons. They have some speed. They have a solid defense. They don't make a lot of mistakes. I've heard it all before. I don't trust Alex Smith. I don't trust the Chiefs. I trust Andy Reid. I trust their playmakers. They're missing Eric Berry, but obviously I trust him. I trust Marcus Peters. Like, I trust a lot of their players and their components, but as a team and their quarterback, I don't buy it. But he is playing well, and so for that I have him in third behind Brady. And Watson was definitely in that conversation, but that conversation is going to be over now considering he has a torn ACL. So for me, Wentz, Brady, Alex Smith. There's a couple other people that I think you could definitely throw in there. Russell Wilson deserves some credit. Even Le'Veon Bell deserves some credit. There's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit for, where the team is. I just think those are the three leading candidates through the first 9 or 10 weeks, wherever we are. I think week 9. And then I just want to touch on a couple of things really quick. First, Cowboys, that whole situation, Zeke being suspended. We're about to find out what Zach really is made of. There's been a lot of speculation. Is he a game manager? Is he an elite quarterback? Is he just is he average? Is he better than average? Is he bad? Like, what exactly is he? Well, you're about to find out. You're about to get 6 solid, very meaningful games. Like, this could determine whether or not they go to the playoffs. If they go 500 and Zeke comes back, they may be able to squeak in that wild card spot. If they go, say, 4-2, I think they'll be in good shape. If they go anything other than 500 or better, I think they're going to be out. Not that that's not obvious, but they already have ground to make up. And so for them to have a setback such as Zeke being suspended is not obviously good. It's not ideal, but it is what it is, I suppose. And then I want to talk about the Eagles really quick. The Eagles they don't just look good to me. They look, and same thing goes for the Eagles and the Seahawks. They don't just look good. They look dominant, and that's the difference. Like, there's a lot of teams that, like, the Steelers look good. The Pats look good. Even the Titans have looked good this year at times. But the Eagles and the Seahawks are dominating people. Like, they are beating people. They aren't just winning games. Like, they're beating people. Now, that game between the Texans and Seahawks was phenomenal. But it shows you how much having an elite, experienced quarterback matters, because it was the back and forth. And Russell Wilson finally said, give me the ball. Let's go win the game. And that was huge. And I've always been a fan of Russell Wilson, so I'm not. This isn't some new proclamation or anything. I'm just saying, like, they are dominating people. Had a couple of big trades. The Eagles picked up Ajayi, and the 49ers took Garoppolo. I know one thing: if I was Kirk Cousins, I'd be pissed at Shanahan. Now, Shanahan may very well have decided, Cousins isn't the guy for us, and that's fine. But from a player's perspective, if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm pissed, because I'm like, I could have been there with you. We could have started our own thing, and we could have been, riding off into the sunset. Instead, he's stuck in Washington with a bunch of average players and an average team with an average coach who's not going to, like, they're going to be a 500 team. They're going to miss the playoffs, and he's going to be there again. They're going to have a huge situation next year, because what do we pay him? Who, like, do we get rid of? Like, what do we do exactly? So what a mess they're in. Jimmy G to the 49ers, big move. We'll see how it shakes up. Here's my take on it. It's a very common take. I know a lot of people feel the same way. I think it's a win-win for them. They didn't really have to pay much. Here's the way I look at it. If Jimmy G was available in the draft right now, where would he go? He'd go in the first or second round. And they only gave up a second-round pick to get him. So he's going into this is his contract year, so he's going into a year. If you like him, you sign him. If you don't, you let him go, or you trade him. Or, if you can trade him, maybe next year you can trade him, something like that. But point being, there's not a whole lot of risk here. You get to see if he's really that dude, and if he's not, you can go pick up another quarterback in the draft. You can trade him, and let's say maybe he even is really good. Maybe you still trade him. Maybe you still trade him for another couple. Now you can trade him for a couple of picks, You get your pick back. Now, I'm not saying they should do this because I think if you get a quarterback that is good, obviously you keep them. But I'm just saying if let's say they are set on taking, let's say, a Sam Darnold or a Josh Rosen or even a Josh Allen in the draft, they just picked up Jimmy G, and let's say they win 4 of their last couple of games. It's like, oh, okay, that he's for real. Maybe they can pick up another first or second round pick. So now they can get Allen or they can get a Darnold or someone like that and another solid player, maybe a Saquon Barkley, or, some like they have a lot of leverage right now. So that's an interesting situation. I hope he does well. It's hard to say. There's people that say, oh, he's legit, he's good. I'm like, dude, we don't know. It's been 2 games that he's played, a couple of quarters. Like, let's stop with that, okay? Let's stop with that. Something is off to me, just considering now obviously we don't know what's going on inside the New England organization, so this is all pure speculation. Something doesn't seem right to me because I feel like if he was that good, you would get more than a second-round pick. But again, it's circumstantial. It could be a combination of different things and different reasons why they didn't get more than that. Maybe it was too late. They kind of were pressed to the wall, so they really kind of if they were going to trade him at the deadline, they basically had to take what they could get. They got a second-round pick. I think that's good for them. So we'll see how that goes next year or the rest of this year and leading into next year. It's going to be an interesting story because they have a really solid team other than quarterback over in San Francisco. Really solid team. And so if he does pan out to be very, very good, they can now add some weapons in the draft and really start to take off. I also want to talk about the Cleveland Browns. And basically, I'm just going to read this this quote, and it was something that I read in the article. I just thought it was perfect summary of what the Cleveland Browns are. And here it is. It starts off by saying, I don't know how to pronounce this. Demancophobia, I think is how it is the fear of Sunday. And this is what they were using to describe the Cleveland Browns. It says the Browns must have a serious case of it because they've lost 25 straight games played on a Sunday. Think about that. That's almost 2 seasons worth of losing. Almost a full 2 seasons. That doesn't include Thursday night games, Monday night games. That is strictly Sunday. 25 straight. Which, according to Elias Sports Bureau, is tied for the longest Sunday losing streak in NFL history to the 76-77 Buccaneers. And their remaining games are all Sunday games. They're going 0-16. The Browns are a mess. They need to blow it up. And Josh Gordon, they just got him back. Hopefully he gets to stay. And he's their best player. He hasn't played in 2 years, and he's probably their best player. That's so sad. They botched a trade to get A.J. McCarron, who they were going to give a second and third round pick for. Moving on. Let's talk some college football. First thing I want to talk about is playoff rankings. I think they got it right. It's early in the season. I think they got the top 4 right, but they also got, let's say the next 4 right, because you have teams who aren't in the top 4, but if they win out, they will be in the top 4 just by logistics. Some of them play each other, so if they win out, they're going to end up shifting anyway. And then some of them by strength of schedule, if they do win out, they end up. So case in point, Ohio State. If Ohio State wins out, they're going to be in the playoff. It's that simple. Same thing with like Georgia and Bama. If one of them, if both of them win out and they play in the championship game, chances are one of them is probably going to. They could possibly slide out of the top 4, possibly going to slide down to number 3 or 4, depending on how good of a game, how close that game is, depending on who wins that game, whether it's Georgia and Alabama, depending on what happens prior to that game in the leading weeks up to it. So, very, very interesting. Ohio State and Penn State, one of the best, again, going kind of along the Seahawks-Texans game. One of the best just games from an entertainment perspective that we've seen in quite a while. Back and forth, comeback. There was an early, looked like it was going to be a blowout by Penn State. A lot of big plays. J.T. Barrett was phenomenal in the fourth quarter. And I saw people talking about how bad he played. I'm like, what game are you guys watching? He went, I want to say 16 for 16 for like 170 and 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, when it's like, dude, it's money time. We're down 15 points. We need you to go. And they pull out, like, he's in the Heisman discussion. Barkley, a lot of hype on Barkley. Listen, Barkley had 20 carries for 8 yards, aside from the one long touchdown run he had. He had a touchdown run of like 32 or 36 yards. Outside of that one long run, he was 20 carries for 8 yards. Ohio State's defense is real, okay? Their offense is better. J.T. Barrett was phenomenal. It still looks, they can run the ball. It's the passing game for me that I question. It's very hot and cold. But offensively, they can run the ball. Defensively, they're phenomenal. They gave up a ton of points, but a lot of those points, they gave up 7. They gave up on the opening kickoff touchdown. Then they had a fumble that was returned to like the 15 that led to a touchdown. And then they gave up another long kickoff that got down to like the 20 that led to a touchdown. So 38-39 was the final score. 21 points came off of special teams and 1 turnover. Now, obviously, that's no excuse, but my point is that's not on the defense. That's on special teams and on the offense. And you can make that case for a lot of teams. I'm just saying that game was a little more one-sided than it may have appeared on the scoreboard, and maybe even on the stat sheet. I don't have the box score or anything in front of me, but that first quarter was a disaster. And from that point on, Ohio State pretty much dominated the game. So Ohio State looks legit. They look like real national championship contenders. I'm not saying they'll win it, but I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to win out, and I think they'll make the playoffs. And it was really funny, and I tweeted this a couple days ago. Colin Cowherd last year mentioned this, and it's really funny because it's so true, and it's come to play out exactly as he said it. Penn State last year was talking about how you need to win your division or win your conference in order to make the playoffs, because they were upset that Ohio State made the playoff and they didn't, even though they won the Big Ten title. And here we are next year, because Colin Cowherd said there's a chance. You got to remember who's in there on their side of the division. It's them, but there's also Michigan State, Michigan, and Ohio State. So they're essentially counting on one of those 3 teams, they're essentially counting on all 3 of those teams to have an off year. Now, all 3 of them aren't going to have an off year at the same time, and also at the same time, you have a great year. Chances are Ohio State's going to win the division or win the Big Ten 9 times out of 10, right? Like, that's not a secret. It's not, and it's not me being a fan, even though I am. Like, that's just reality. Like, they're probably going to win the conference. Every now and then you have another contender. It was close for the last couple of years. Penn State won it last year. Like, so, but the norm is Ohio State's going to win it. And so now here you are this year, after having just lost to Ohio State, not in position to control your own destiny in terms of getting to the Big Ten title game and also the playoffs. Because if Ohio State wins out, they're in the title game. So, you know, that whole idea, and Cowherd explained it best last year. Winning the title doesn't mean that a lot of people were complaining that it doesn't mean anything because Ohio State got in, and his point was, it's not that it doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't mean everything. And there is a very distinct difference. And that's it. I've watched a lot of games this year. College football is a little different for me. I watch, some of the Power 5 teams, but I don't watch a lot until, let's say, the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. I watch the Buckeyes, I watch Bama, I'll watch Clemson, Florida State, teams like that, Miami, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, Georgia. Like, I watch teams like that throughout the week or throughout the season. But once we start getting to the end of the year, that's when I start really, really, really paying attention. So we'll see how things start to shake up. And I should say that's when I start paying attention, but that's when I start talking about it. Because leading up to that point, I mean, there's a lot of games that they don't matter. I mean, Bama plays, basically high school teams leading up to it. Same thing. I mean, all of them do. So until they play really meaningful games, that's when I like Ohio State, Penn State. That's a big game. Bama, Georgia. That's a big game. Oklahoma, Texas, big game. USC, like those are big games. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the college football. Oh, and the Heisman. I think JT Barrett should be in the discussion. In fact, he should be first or second. 30 touchdowns, 1 pick. Enough said. And I quickly want to touch on the NBA. So far, NBA is a little bit different. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's obviously a long ways to go. We just started. But just really quickly, a couple of teams that I really like so far. OKC is really the only one. Obviously, the Warriors are good. The Lakers, they're not good, but I'm impressed with the way they are playing. Lonzo Ball looks like he's going to be special. The 76ers look good. Ben Simmons looked like he is going to be a superstar. Lonzo looks like he can play. He just needs to figure out his shot, I think, and he also needs to figure out his spots in the game. He seems to be very, very passive. And it'll come with time, both of them, him and Simmons, and a lot of these younger players. Like, these are things that are, they're going to pick up over time. Lonzo, there's people talking about Lonzo being small and he's too small. I'm like, dude, he's 19, 20 years old, his first year, and literally like his first 2 or 3 weeks in the season or in his career. Like, give it time, dude. He's not even a man yet. He's literally a kid playing in a grown man's league. And I think in the NBA, you need grown men to win an NBA. Now, you do in every sport, but in the NFL, for example, you can bring in a young rookie or second year player, and you can win games because they can affect the game in ways that it doesn't matter if you're a quote unquote man or a kid. Like, you get someone that's really, really fat. Like, Tyreek Hill is young. He's not a man. He's a man, but you know what I mean. He's not a vet, so to speak. Like, he's not one of the old guys. But he obviously is a game changer because of how fast he is. Same thing with someone like Deshaun Watson, for example. Same sort of deal. Like, he's not quote-unquote man, but he is so so fast and so good throwing the football. Like, you have to account for that. Whereas in the NBA, you have to, if you're not a lights-out three-point shooter where you can affect the game from distance, and you need to go into the paint, like, unless you're just an absolute man child, like Karl Anthony Towns is a little bit different. And then even they didn't even make the playoffs. So give Lonzo some time, man. He'll be fine. He's got to grow into his body. He doesn't even have a full beard yet, okay? Like, let him be. Let the guy, like, he's clearly a good player, okay? He scored close to 30 points in the game. He's averaging, 10 or 11 points a game, close to a triple-double. Simmons is the same way. He's averaging, 18 a game, 10 and 9 or something like that, 8 and 9. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but, my point is you can see the production. You can see the talent. So I don't understand why everyone is so quick to jump on these rookies or second-year players and condemn or anoint them. So, I don't understand it. Giannis is another one where it's like, dude, he ain't been in the league that long, and now all of a sudden he's going to be the next greatest thing. And I get it, it's great, but let's pump the brakes a little bit. People seem to forget, there's a guy in the West on the Warriors named Kevin Durant who's in, he is the next one. I don't know why people skipped over him. I mean, they say it he's going to be out of the league in the next 2 years or something. KD is going to be around for a while. He's young. Now, he's not going to be around for 10 years, but LeBron ain't going to be there for another 10 years. And KD, I think, is taking. I think LeBron is still the better player individually, but he's not beating KD on that team. Sorry, it's not happening. And so I don't know why. How is it that we went from LeBron to Giannis and not LeBron to KD? You know what I mean? Like, I don't get that. It's weird to me. And like Karl Anthony Towns and Giannis and Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, like these are all great, solid players. But it's going to take some time. It's the NBA, okay? It takes. LeBron didn't win it in his first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth year. It took him to what, year 8, year 9? Even LeBron. Now Kobe, granted, he had Shaq, but once Shaq left, he didn't win until what year? Let's see, he came in at 97, so year 13, 14. Like, it takes time, dude. It takes time. So give Lonzo a break. Give Kyrie a break. Kyrie's been great so far to me, especially considering what he has. I think it's actually now with the now if the Cavs continue this, and again, this is it's super early in the season, so we don't know. But if they continue to play the way they are, they're not beating the Celtics. They're not beating anybody. They're going to bounce in the first round if they play the way they are. I don't think that they will, but I'm just saying, if they play as they are now, they're going to get bounced in the first round. Oh, all right. So that's a lot to swallow. It's a lot. I know I went over a lot of things, but I just wanted to get it out there. Just kind of put it all out. I think I'm going to do this format more often where I can just pick a couple topics and then just go instead of trying to narrow it down to specific, teams or games. I just want to talk about NFL, college football, NBA, pick the topics I want to talk about. I think this is a little bit easier to digest. It's a little bit easier to keep track of. It's a little bit easier for me to talk about because now I don't feel like I'm obligated to talk about one topic or the other. So I'll leave you guys with that. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.